Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome everybody to episode 36 of Instigate Success. I am Jake Schoen, your host for the podcast. And even though we're in the off season now, we still have a bit of news throughout this week. So we'll cover some AAC news as well as some ABA news. And I figure we might as well talk about some March Madness as well, since that just kicked off. And that's basketball related too. But thank you everybody for joining us here. We are in off-season mode. We're looking into the next season, seeing what we can do for next season, as well as kind of just spitballing ideas as far as the AAC. Again, thank you everybody for being here, being one of our supporters on Patreon. We'll have votes throughout the off season, and you'll be able to have an input onto what happens with our team and the AAC as we go throughout the off season, and especially once we get closer to the next season of ABA basketball for the Hoosier State Instigators. There will be plenty of votes for you guys to have an input and have a chance to decide the future for our the AAC. But as always, if you guys have any kind of recommendations for what we should do, we're always here to listen to that as well. And to kick things off, we posted this just a couple days ago. Corey wrote this nice letter here. It was our 1-year anniversary on the 20th. I joined a little bit later, so not quite 1-year anniversary for me, but 1 year since the inception date for the LLC of the Apex Athletic Collective, as well as the Hoosier State Instigators, the idea behind it. And the vision with the AAC not only is to have a basketball team, which is the Hoosier State Instigators, but to continue to build and create a whole entire kind of sports, not multiple franchises within the multitude of sports for fans to have even more say within the sports world. I know a lot of us came over from fan controlled football, and we continued to build off of that. We wanted to have or let fans have even more of a say than what was given to us from fan controlled football. I know that was a nice little taste that all of us got that were part of that. And it kind of opened our eyes to the reality that the borders between ownership and fandom can kind of be blended into this new way of enjoying sports. And hopefully, we continue to break down some barriers between that and have fans make pretty much all the decisions when it comes to their favorite sports franchises. And we were able to do that this past year with the Hoosier State Instigators. I don't think any of us really thought the first year that we would actually have a team not only founded but play a full season at this point. So we're very thankful for everybody that has been part of this journey. We really wouldn't be here without all you guys' supports. And that includes everybody, the fans here, as well as our players, staff, anybody that was involved throughout the season, our supporters and sponsors, as well as our partners throughout the season. But it's crazy to think that in 1 year that this has went from kind of just a dream, something that we've talked about and had on paper, and it's turned into reality. And now you can even go back on our YouTube channel if you really want, and we have all the games uploaded there. You could rewatch the whole season, so it is real and it has happened. But again, thank you everybody that's been a part of this. We continue to look to grow in the future and hope to provide you guys even better second year of the Apex Athletic Collective. But that's how I word it. Corey words it a little bit better and more eloquently in this post that he put up. But he's one of the guys that was the brain behind this whole thing. And a few other guys I know, Rob, he was there as well, and I think Spacely too, were the original guys. I believe Dylan as well was originally a part of that too. So shout out to all those guys because like I said, I joined a little bit later, but to have that vision to file all the paperwork, so it was a little bit easier for me to get onto this as well. Um, but yeah, I joined a little bit later, I think in the fall. So I'll have to look when the exact date was, but I'll be sure to point that out at some point. Um, but March 20th, that was the inception date for the Apex Athletic Collective. So a nice little anniversary for us this past week. And like I said, we'll be doing stuff throughout the off season. So be sure to keep an eye on our Patreon here. And we'll continue to have these streams every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'll continue to host these as well as we'll try to get some more content involved on our Patreon too. And let's see the next thing we got here. There was some news within the ABA just over the past couple of days. They announced the All-Star team. So this the past week we had the uh, All-Pro teams. This is the All-Star team, and we were lucky enough to have one of our own players on this. I'm sure you can probably take a guess, and you would be correct. That is number 7 Alex Brown. And as always, he's been our go-to guy every every game it seems, and he always puts up those crazy stats. And I also gotta do shout out here, Jason. I forgot to mention we did have the swoops team as well in this past year. That was like the pre real life team. We had Frosty McSpacely on that team, and that kind of helped us build into our reality, the real team that we had on the court. But that was a nice way to kick things off was with that swoops team. Thank you, Jason, for helping us out with that, and hopefully we can continue to work on something, hopefully something similar, or if that picks back up, we can do that again. But that was a great way to get us involved throughout the off season as we prepared for our inaugural season with the Hoosier State Instigators. Um, but AB getting that shout out for the All-Star team in the Central region. That was our only player on the All-Star team. And if you take a look there, you can probably see some of the other guys that we've faced throughout the season that have put up some pretty good games. Uh, the one that I know by name, especially when he's played against us, is Cameron Mitchell, number 6 from the Ohio Kings. I don't know what his official stat was for points per game, but it seemed like he put up just about 50 points every time we played against him. And I know throughout the season, I'm pretty sure he was over 40. So he was very high on that points per game list. So definitely no surprise to see his name on there as well. And if we take a look at the other teams and players in the Central region, we see some teams that we didn't have a chance to face off against. The Central region, we were within the red division. There are a couple different color divisions within the Central region, so we may not have played them due to that. But I know we did also play against the Southland Saints. So our Bonnie Shorter, that is also another player that we had the chance to face against. We actually played the Southland Saints twice, and we were able to come out victorious in both of those games. And Jason, you are exactly right. You can't spell the ABA without AB, and sure he loves that as well. He's definitely been a great leader for the team throughout the season. And as always, he had the best, I think, photo day shoot for the team, and he wound up being on pretty much all of our promotional stuff. Anytime I was making a graphic, he had that awesome pose where he just kind of like had his shoulders like that and his arms crossed. and it made it fun for any of the graphics I was making, whether it was Player of the Week or one of our intro videos. And with our partnership in fan controlled, that also made it pretty fun for them to make some of the team graphics each week for our weekly picks. But definitely one of the most fun guys to be around, and just a great dude to represent the Hoosier State Instigators as an ABA All Star. But it's an honor to have an All Star in our first season. If you take a look there, you'll see in this all-star list, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. Um, Unless I'm completely missing it, but I'm pretty sure I looked over this list a couple of times. I don't see anybody from the Indiana Lions on that list, which is kind of crazy because they are the defending co-champions. And we'll go into it a little bit more, but they're the team that is representing the red division in the central region. So to be the best team in that, uh, the red division, is kind of crazy that they don't have any all-star players. But they are a very good team collectively, and but that just kind of stood out to me as far as the list. But I knew if I had to take a bet, the two guys I would have bet were on that list would be AB. We saw him week in and week out. Not many people are able to put up triple doubles with blocks. So that statistic alone, he was leader in the whole entire league for blocks. Um, and that kind of stood out, and when you look at the stats, that's always going to stand out. So I figured he would be on there, as well as Cameron Mitchell. Like I said, every time we played against him, he just put up some crazy amount of points. So I figured he would probably be on that list as well. Um, so there is your all-star team for the 2023-2024 ABA All Stars. And there are four regions within the ABA. I know we've mentioned this in the past. There's about 150 teams, so they did break it down within the region. So you have your East, Central, South, and West regions. And when we were nominating our players, I believe it was the same pool that they selected from the All Pro team, which was a two-player selection from each team. So that also could have had some limitations, because I do see a couple of teams on here in some of the other regions do have multiple players, such as the Buffalo Extreme right off the bat. You can see on the East region, and the Providence Pirates look like they also have multiple players, but it looks like two players is the most for any team that I'm seeing as far as that graphic goes. But I do believe it was the same player pool from that initial list. So our two guys from last week we had on that first team was AB, and second team we had Dylan Ware. Both of those guys had standout seasons. It's too bad we couldn't have thrown some other guys onto that list, because we definitely had quite a few other guys that I'm sure would have gave a run for their money for this all-star team. I think the one guy that stands out is Lawan Swish Whitney. He had over 50% from threes on the year, and that was not a low quantity of threes that he took. That was over 100 3-point attempts, and he shot a 51% from three. So that would have, I think that would have been our next guy up. We also had a great team throughout the season as well. JoJo always was a key player. Chuck Bloom, the team captain, just as well as everyone else on the team. But we also had late addition to the team, Mike Pugh. He kind of had a great game in the playoffs, but unfortunately, like I said, we were only able to put two players up for those votes. So they kind of limited it. But I think we had a handful of players that could have made their way onto any of these lists. And hopefully next year we can have, an even harder vote when we come down to that time and we have to choose the two players. But I think as long as AB is around next year, he is going to be on that list again. He's just a crazy athlete. The amount of triple doubles he put up was amazing, leading the league in blocks as well. That's definitely something we hope to have back next year. And a little bit of news around the league, and then we'll jump into the playoffs from this past week. This was announced a little bit earlier, I think about a day or so ago. The IBL, who we had played against, and they've been a nice partner through our inaugural season. Um, they have the team, the Indiana Shuckers, that we played our scrimmage against before we went to our regular season, and it kind of helped us out a lot. It gave us an idea of what our team looked at game speed, and it gave us an idea of where to improve and get us ready for our first game, as well as kind of test out our streaming and getting all that stuff set up as well. And if you remember, there was one player on the Shuckers that kind of just lit us up and really led that team to the victory. That was Lawan Swish Whitney, and we did wind up signing him. And I think it was like the second or the third week, I think he joined the team, the Hoosier State Instigators. But had we not played that game against the IBL, if you think about that, that's actually a really important game because that got us our best 3-point shooter on the season. And they just made an announcement that they are looking to expand and jump into the ABA. So that's big news for them. And congratulations to them for that. Class Acts, they've been a great partner throughout our inaugural season. And that Crossroads Community Church, their home venue, that was actually the venue that we wound up using for our first playoff game, the play in against the Indiana Legends. So that venue as well has been helpful in our inaugural season as well. So thank you to both of those for their support in the inaugural season, and we wish them luck as they look to join the ABA. As far as what this details, this was a post they put on Instagram, I do believe. And they are looking to expand into the ABA with the Shuckers as the teams, the franchise for the IBL. Um, Currently, the IBL is like the league. If you did like a tier of leagues, they'd be right under the ABA. So they're looking to take some of their best players and jump into the ABA. But they did detail in this announcement here that they are looking at being an exhibition team. So a little bit different than what the Instigators were, or Instigators are. And they are looking just to kind of be like an exhibition team, a team that fills in when other teams happen to have holes in their schedule or cancellations. And they would also wind up being in our region and division. So when they join, they'll be in that red division. So even more competition for next year for your Hoosier State Instigators to look out for. Um, they do mention, though, that there is a possibility of them becoming full league team as we are, and if they're able to pick up some sponsors to help offset the initial cost of the team. But either way, I look forward to seeing them uh, in the ABA. It'll be a little bit of friendly competition because we faced them before they even joined the ABA, so we'll have a little bit more history with them compared to some of the other teams within our division. And it's a nice venue, the Crossroads Community Church. Again, that was the venue we played the first game against the Shuckers there, as well as our first play-in game was there before we were able to head back to our home venue, the Clinton CRC, and play our final game there. But again, that's a little bit of news throughout the league. If we see anything else throughout the league that jumps out, we'll definitely keep you guys updated on that throughout the off season. And to jump into the playoffs in the Central Red Division, uh, this week was hosted by the Indiana Lions. So if you remember, we had played in the play-in weekend for the tournament, and it was between the Hoosier State Instigators. I forgot to pull the bracket from that, but it was between the Hoosier State Instigators and the Indiana Legends. and we were able to take down the Legends in that first matchup. Second matchup was between the Clarksville Phoenix and the Louisville Pros. That was a very tight game, and the Clarksville Phoenix pulled off a win at the end, a very close one-score game. And then they came on the road against the Hoosier State Instigators, and they were able to pull off the victory. So the Phoenix were the team that progressed through the play-in tournament and got to play this past weekend against the Ohio Kings. And we'll jump into that then. So the first matchup here, I think it might have actually been the Kings and the Phoenix, but the first one I have here on the slide is the Aces and the Lions. So that was the 2 and the 3 seed within the Central Red Division, and the Lions they are the co-defending champions. They were able to take down the Nashville Aces in a pretty tight game, 111 to 103. And we saw throughout the season, the Lions, they had a very good season. I believe they only had a couple of losses total, but every game they were pretty close. And even the games that we had against the Lions, we were able to stick around throughout that game, both of those games. And that is what happened this round between the Aces and the Lions. The Aces as well were a very tough team when we faced them. Um, believe on the season, as far as the games that we actually had a chance to take the court, we were not able to take down either one of these teams. We did have a default win against the Aces due to a cancellation because they were not able to make it to one of the games that we had scheduled at our home venue in the Clinton CRC. They weren't able to make that travel out. So on paper, technically, we do have the one win against the Aces. But as far as the games that we actually had the chance to play the distance on the court, we were not able to secure a victory against either one of these teams. Um, so both of these teams are some pretty tough opponents. We'll have to keep those in mind again as we go through the next season. Um, but the Lions again progressed into the final in the Red Division, and the team they matched up against is the Ohio Kings. The Ohio Kings matched up against the Clarksville Phoenix. The Kings went undefeated on the season, and I believe they were awarded the number one seed, even though they did not have as many games as the Lions. I believe they only had 14 games, if I remember correctly. But they were undefeated throughout the season, so they were able to secure that top seed. The Clarksville Phoenix, again, they were the team that took down the Hoosier State Instigators in that final play-in game. They were the number 5 seed within the Central Red Division. They were able to take down our team. However, they were very close to taking down the Ohio Kings and handing them their first loss on the season. However, the Kings were able to pull off a 2-point victory, 110 to 108 against the Clarksville Phoenix. Do also want to point out, though, we were made aware that the Kings did not have some of their top players in the playoffs. Cameron Mitchell, who I mentioned earlier in this stream, he was their leading scorer throughout the season, as well as a couple other their starters are, I believe, were not available in the playoffs. And I believe I just did a quick Google search if you search Cameron Mitchell just to see where he is. So he's actually playing in Mexico currently. So that would be the reason why he was not in the playoff games. So he actually has moved into a little bit of a higher level, I guess, as far as playing. And he was playing in Tijuana, if I remember correctly. So it's not that he decided not to play to the game. He actually had some other obligations as far as that goes. But the Ohio Kings were still able to pull off that victory. Again, a very close game between the Phoenix and the Kings. That led to the matchup between the Kings and the Lions. If you remember the regular season, the Kings were the first. Uh, they were the first seed because they were undefeated, and the Lions were the number 2 seed. The teams matched up a couple of times throughout the regular season. I believe the one game got called to a stoppage because of altercation. Don't remember all the details on that. What I do remember though is the one game that they were able to finish in its entirety. The Kings were actually able to pull off the victory in that matchup. So very competitive teams in the finale for the Central Red Division. And if you watched throughout the season and kind of kept an eye on the teams and the power rankings and the stats and everything along those lines, both of these teams were within the top 5, I believe, in the power rankings for the final power rankings that the ABA put out. So definitely some of the highest level of competitors throughout the whole entire 150 plus team ABA, and that led to a great finale. And the Lions were able to walk away with the victory in that. A little bit bigger of a difference in the score there than what may have been expected. But again, I think the Kings were without some of their players. Um, and in the fourth quarter, they just weren't able to hold on to that game quite as well. Um, but again, the Lions are the co-defending champions for a reason. When it came to playoffs, it seems like they really locked in here, and they knew exactly what they had to do. They've been down this road a few times before, and they're going to represent the Central Red Division as they continue throughout the playoffs. I do believe they are actually hosting this week as well, if I'm not mistaken. And they're going to continue on their fight and try to get into the championship game, which is in Alabama. That'll be a lot closer to where I'm located in Florida. But the Lions, again, they are the team representing your Central Red Division. Um, and I think they're going to be a great team to represent this division. I think I mean, they've done it before, so I wouldn't put it past them to repeat as the champion. It'd also be nice to be able to say again next year when we play our games that we go against the defending champion in our matchups. You know, the Central Red Division is definitely one of the toughest divisions within the whole entire ABA, and we're kind of proud of that. You know, maybe we didn't take the easiest path, but it kind of made it so that we have our guys, you know, ready for when the playoffs come, knowing that they're able to play against these top level teams throughout the regular season. And I think that's really going to help us and be beneficial down the road as we continue to grow as a team and organization over the next couple of seasons. I definitely think we'll be able to compete. We were even close this year to competing with these top teams, and I think just have to put a little bit more pieces of the puzzle together, and we'll be back in this next year. Hopefully, we'll be the team representing the Central Red Division when it comes to our second season. As far as what that means is this weekend. Yes, it is. It is at the Lions home venue. So the Lions get to take on the Pit Bulls, and the other semifinal game is between the Buckets and the Fury. And the Lions will have that first game at 4 p.m. tomorrow, and the second game is going to be at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Again, same kind of scenario. Winners of the Saturday games will move on to the Sunday game, and the Sunday game will be the champion, and that champion will continue to progress on to the next round of playoffs. Um, I'll be honest, so I have not followed the other divisions quite as much throughout the season. So it'll be interesting to see how these teams match up because I honestly have not seen these other teams play in person or watch them live. Might catch these games though as we go throughout the playoffs, especially a game with the Lions. I think I'll try to tune into that if I can, or catch a replay. Um, but a chance here to represent the central region. Again, these are the different colors throughout the region. So you can see the little trophies there represent which color they are within the region. There's four colors within the region, so that would be what those trophies are signifying, and these will decide the ultimate winner for your central region. So that'll the team that wins Saturday and Sunday will progress on and represent the central region in the actual um, championship series as the ABA progresses to move into the final four between the central, the east, the west, and the south regions. So a lot on the line for all these teams. Again, these are single elimination playoffs. So win and you're in, or lose and you're go home. So kind of similar to the other big thing that is going on this week. I'm sure many people here have probably been watching this, and you may even be watching it right now on a second screen. I know that even throughout the workday, it's a little bit difficult to get through the regular workday. Yesterday and today, I'm sure that the average employee attention span has dropped significantly over the past couple of days. That would be due to March Madness, the big tournament everybody seems to watch every year. So I'm a Syracuse grad. I've always grew up a Syracuse fan. They did not make the tournament, so it kind of made it easy for me this year to just kind of watch the games and not really worry about it as much, because I don't have to worry about Syracuse at all. But because I'm a Syracuse fan, I did happen to catch the ACC tournament, and there was an amazing run in the ACC tournament by NC State, and they were led by their big man, DJ Burns. And if you happen to catch any of the games that he's been a part of with NC State, he kind of is just like an old school basketball player. Uh, Big guy. He's, I think, 250 plus, and he kind of just bodies his way inside and goes up for the baskets, but he's not your typical big guy. He doesn't slam it down. He has really nimble feet and some pretty great ball handling skills. And he kind of just hits like some crazy layups and floaters and has like bounce passes across the court. It's fun to watch him play. And if I'd pick a team I'd want to watch play throughout the tournament, that's the team I'm going to pick is NC State. They were able to pull off a victory, an upset victory last night against Texas Tech. And I look forward to watching them throughout the tournament. Do I have them, though, in my Final Four or the championship? Not quite. I'm not sure if they'll be able to make that run. However, they were pretty dominant throughout the ACC tournament. I think that the team that gave them the most trouble, as surprising as it sounds, is Virginia, who did not really show up when it came to the actual March Madness tournament. But they went into overtime against Virginia. However, they were able to knock off Duke and North Carolina in the ACC tournament. So NC State, that's a team to watch out for in this March Madness this season. And they've shown they're able to hang around with some of these top teams. And it's kind of crazy every year. You always have some upsets and things that you aren't quite expecting. I know another one of the upsets that was fun to watch last night was Oakland over Kentucky, and they have uh, blanking on the name, but he had the guy shoots basically only 3 pointers. He had made more 3 pointers in that game last night, which was 10. He shot 10 of 20 from three, which is pretty crazy, but he made more 3 pointers than 2 point shots he took on the season. Um, But that's actually the matchup that will be, I think tomorrow is NC State versus Oakland. So that's the game I'm looking forward to watching tomorrow. As far as brackets, I'm sure that everybody here has filled out a bracket. There's a bunch of games that you can play when it comes to prizes and stuff for the brackets. Take a look at mine. So I went with the easy route, and I didn't have any like kind of crazy team win the championship. I know that I had UConn as the team winning. I think that was kind of like the easy out as far as that goes because I know they shouldn't be eliminated super early. And that team has been pretty good throughout the season with Dan Hurley as the head coach. But let me see. So my final four, I had UConn. The one team that I did have that is a little out there is Dayton, and they almost were eliminated yesterday. They had a comeback victory and were able to pull off that win. Let me see. Forget who they played. It was Nevada, so they were able to come back and win by 3 points in that game. But that was a very close game and nearly completely destroyed my bracket already in the first day. My other Final Four teams, I have Creighton as well as Marquette. If you look at the numbers, that's a 1 seed, a 7 seed, a 3 seed, and a 2 seed. So I went kind of safe with my picks. Um, but if anybody else wants to share who they have winning or their Final Four, feel free to drop that in the chat. But I know there was one team that kind of got left out of the March Madness this year that kind of hit a little close to home for the Apex Athletic Collective and the Hoosier State Instigators. Um, was Indiana State. The Indiana State Sycamores had one of their best seasons on record since Larry Bird. They were led by the guy who I seem to only know by his nicknames, and I think his real name might be Avila, if I'm that's his last name. But he seems to be known by the nicknames, whether it is Larry Nerd or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was the star player for the Sycamores this past year, and they had a very good run. They're in the NIT, and they're a 1 seed in the NIT, and little shocking that they didn't make it. I thought they were kind of one of those teams that I seen ranked throughout the season. They had a couple of losses towards the end of the season, and they lost in their tournament, their divisional tournament, I believe, against Drake. They fell, and I still thought they were going to be in there, but surprisingly, it's kind of like college football playoffs. They pick the teams that they have on their list, and it's not always the teams that everybody else has on their list. And just a little bit shocking, but he has been kind of an internet sensation throughout the season. So I wanted to see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar have another shot in building his brand, but looks like he'll have to do that in the NIT. And I mean, I'll throw this out there. I know we've had other owners say this as well, but we would love if maybe sometime down the future, a few years down the future, if things don't happen to pan out for him, maybe we'll try to reach out and get him onto the Instigators. But I think that's definitely a few years down the road from this point. But he's kind of led that Sycamores team, and get a little disappointed he doesn't have the opportunity to represent them in this March Madness tournament. But still plenty of fun games to watch. Thanks, Jason, for dropping your teams in here. So UConn or Houston, those were the two teams I was between two. And yeah, I agree. It's going to be hard for UConn to go back to back. But that team has just been. I mean, as far as the teams go throughout the season, they've been pretty consistent. Um, Not really anything kind of crazy that stands out as like a weakness. Um, but I don't know. I mean, Houston was a great team as well. I think had they done a little bit better in their tournament, their divisional tournament. I think I probably would have went with Houston, but Iowa State um, kind of came out and blew them up in that final tournament game. That kind of scared me a little bit from taking them as my overall champion. But I know in some of the other brackets I had, I still had them in the championship game. Um, and think those would be the two teams I would have as my two favorite teams to win. Um, I always throw like the teams that have the history behind them as well, whether that's like Kansas or UNC. Um, Not a huge Duke fan. I mean, I'm not a huge UNC fan either, being a Syracuse fan. But I know Duke has lost a couple of games pretty early on in the tournament, as well as Kentucky. Again, Kentucky already lost, so they're out already. But UNC typically holds up a little bit better. Kansas seems to hold up pretty well. Um, and I know the one team that was a little controversial getting in was Michigan State. They had a lot of losses on their record, and without being a conference winner, that kind of hurt their resume. Was the number of losses they had on the season, and they came out and Tom Izzo led that team to a victory. So again, it's not always the record, but it's kind of just who comes out each game and is ready to play, and that's the greatness behind March Madness. Um, Again, there's 64 teams; they all have a shot, and whichever team walks away with it at the end, it is single elimination. So you can't have an off game, and you can see some teams ride momentum. Like I said, North Carolina State, NC State, they have been riding the momentum for a while. They wrapped up their regular season on a slump and just came out of nowhere, kind of, when it came to the ACC tournament. And they're already able to pick up their first victory. They'll look to pick up another victory tomorrow. But it's kind of just if you get your team hot at the right time, that is that's all that really matters. Um, because even if you're the best team in the regular season, if you have that one off game, that is what's going to wreck the bracket for you. And I'm sure you've been watching to see if anybody's got the perfect brackets. I know Bijan Robinson, the Falcons running back, has had a pretty long run at it. He did finally have his bracket busted, and taking a look now to see if there is anybody, because they have like that live perfect bracket thing on their app. It looks like there's 8 perfect brackets left, and that's not even through the first round. Um, so they're still playing the first round here, and there's only 8 left. So that's pretty impressive, to see that there are that many permutations and variations when it comes to picking brackets, and yet it just seems like nobody is ever able to pick the perfect bracket. Again, it's just so many variables when it comes to it. It's hard to tell who's going to win those games. Different colleges, I mean, there's differences between the level of play throughout the season, funding, facilities, whatnot, but you always have those Cinderella stories who seem to bust those brackets. And that's the best part, I think, about March Madness, is that everybody has a chance. And I'll definitely be watching the rest of March Madness throughout the weekend as well as the upcoming weeks. But we'll keep an eye on that. Also, see like if my bracket gets busted or some of my teams get knocked out of those final four, I'll bring that up at some point and keep you guys updated on that as well. That's an interesting thing. So a perfect losing bracket. There is currently one perfect losing bracket. That's also pretty impressive. Um, I think, yeah. I mean, if you could pull off a perfect losing bracket, I think that's maybe a little bit easier than a perfect bracket like overall with winning. But I don't know. That gets tricky when it goes towards the rest of the games, because if you have all the wrong teams, I think your bracket just ends at that point. Um, if you're able to have a perfect losing bracket in the first round. Um, so that's interesting too. but I'll definitely be watching that. Maybe hopefully some scouting as far as potential future instigators. Um, I know I know we had at least one player. I might be forgetting any other players that had a chance to play in March Madness. But Mike Pugh, he actually had a chance to play in college and was able to take his team on the run in a tournament in March Madness. Um, I'm drawing a blank on the team right now that he was a part of, but I know his college team, he was a part of March Madness. He was talking about that this the last weekend I was up there. So it's also cool to say that we are involved with this in some way somehow. So hopefully in the future we'll have some more guys that we can say we're part of March Madness, and maybe we'll eventually get some guys from this March Madness that we were able to scout out. So keep your eyes open for that as well. Um, but again, we'll continue to have more votes and stuff throughout the off season. We're still working on getting some stuff squared away, but we'll always have this stream here on Friday nights. I think that's pretty much everything I had on here. Just one more thing I was going to pull up real quick. So I moved to Florida this past year, and so I'm from Pennsylvania. And when you move states, you do have to get new license. So I did get a new license this past week. I blurred out everything, so you can't really see any of my personal information. All you can see is the states which the license is from. So I'll show you guys my new license. Here is the progression from the past few years. Um, so that one on the far right, I actually got the license picture taken while I was still rocking my look for the playoffs. So that's also a kind of a fun story when it comes to anytime I have to show identification now. I have to explain that a little bit. And as you can see, my hair is back to how it was. Um, I've heard some people say Johnny Depp, but it's kind of a little bit longer now than it was. It might be closer to like Jaime Jaquez of the Miami Heat as far as what my hair is now. But fun thing there. So anytime I have to pull up my ID, I'll remember the inaugural season playoff run. And here in Florida, that's 8 years. So I'll have that for 8 years. But just a quick little thing there. Wanted to shout out that as well. So now anytime I have to give ID, I'll have the playoff picture of me. Um, and maybe I'll bring that back next year for playoffs, unless it's requested earlier than that. But until then, I'll be watching some March Madness college basketball this weekend. Lots of games still going on here. And I think that does it all for this week's episode. Again, episode 36 of Instigate Success. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. As always, thank you for joining us here on the Apex Athletic Collective Patreon. We'll continue to keep you guys updated on the ABA playoffs as well. And we'll go over that next week to see who represents the Central region in the ABA playoffs. But until then, as always, thank you for watching and be great and instigate.